Winter storms since late January have contributed to the most widespread snow cover across the U.S. in at least 17 years. The huge winter storm sweeping across southern U.S. has killed over 20 people, leaving millions without power. There have been widespread blackouts in Texas, where the energy grid was overwhelmed by a surge in demand. Elsewhere, more than 250,000 people also lost power across parts of Appalachia. Millions of people in the state, which rarely experiences such low temperatures, have been struggling to cope with the lack of power and the frigid conditions. The freezing storm has even reached northern and central parts of New Mexico, where millions of people have been experiencing days of intermittent power cuts. Another 250,000 were without electricity following an ice storm in northwest Oregon. The extreme weather is forecast to continue until the weekend. Deaths attributed to the storm have been recorded in Texas, Louisiana, Kentucky, North Carolina, Missouri. In North Carolina, 3 people were found dead after a tornado hit a seaside town. While in Texas, 4 family members perished in a Houston area house fire while using a fireplace to stay warm. Other deaths occurred in states like Louisiana, Kentucky, and Missouri from causes that included car crashes and carbon monoxide poisoning. Travel also remaining ill-advised in much of the country, with roadways treacherous and thousands of flights cancelled. Some of the fatalities involve people dying in their cars in the sub-freezing temperatures. The conditions also delayed vaccine shipments. Texas is due to receive more than 400,000 doses this week, but the winter storm has halted Texas's urgent and critical COVID-19 vaccination efforts. The reasons for the closure of the vaccination centers ranging from lack of supply to utility issues. The closure includes 85 large vaccination hubs and several hundred smaller providers across the state. Our correspondent Susan Teherani is now joining us from New York for more on this. What are things looking like in New York, Susan? Texas has borne the brunt with power outages, water shortages also being reported in several parts.
That's right. You know, these images would probably describe the situation here in New York better than I would be able to describe. We have a lot of snow here, and it looks like possibly the 4th or 5th time, Molly, that you and I have been talking in this kind of weather here in the Northeast, notably New York. The one issue here is that the Northeast of the United States is accustomed to weather like this, and despite some shortfalls, is often more prepared than a place like Texas, which is generally very warm. That region is not accustomed to weather like we see right now, and it's looking like it's not going to get any better anytime soon. One issue with the fatalities is a very heartbreaking, because either these 31 people who have been reported dead have either been killed in car crashes or had been outside with not a place to go and had succumbed to the freezing cold, or they were trying to keep warm because they didn't have electricity and power by using unsafe measures and resorting to those. And the conversation right now is about whether or not Texas should be doing more and how much the federal government is really helping. We do know that FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, that's a federal organization, has been stepping in. They've been providing blankets and water and necessities. They usually step in during snowstorms and thunderstorms and also floods. But a lot more needs to be done, and people are in a very dire situation. A latest development politically is that we just heard that Senator Ted Cruz decided to leave Texas for Cancun, Mexico, a warm region with no storm, and he's facing a lot of criticism for doing that.
Absolutely, because most people might not even have that option. Now, all these adverse weather conditions coming amid the looming threat of the COVID-19 virus spread as well. And social distancing is not absolutely possible in many of these centers that have been set up.
Absolutely. You know, every situation right now is with the backdrop of COVID. And these vaccination sites have been set up. They've been ready. Oftentimes, the problem had been distribution and not the lack of vaccine or the manufacturing of the vaccine. But when distribution is already a problem, you can imagine how challenging that would be in a situation right now. And the question remains whether or not these sites have the capacity to keep these vaccines valid for when they are able to use it against vulnerable communities and those who are waiting in line to receive this vaccine. Here in New York, most public vaccine sites have been closed. However, the Columbia Medical Center remains open and individuals are getting their vaccines at that location, as we are told. But then again, the problem is, you know, because the priority is with the elderly, whether or not they can even get to these vaccine sites, albeit having an open site ready for them, ready to serve them. So yeah, COVID definitely a huge issue. And then there's the issue of why and how we can move forward among officials. They're talking and having a debate on whether or not it's an infrastructure issue, whether or not it is blamed on moving too fast on renewable energy, and whether or not the states should have stuck to what they know to be working, which is traditional fossil fuel.
Susan Tehrani, keep warm. Thanks very much for joining us with those updates. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.